Welcome back also to our followers online. We have now resumed with the live stream. Now it is my absolute honor to welcome to the stage the Foreign Minister of Finland and the OSCE Chairperson-in-Office, Elina Valtonen. Warmly welcome.
Thank you.
Minister Valtonen is a fourth-term member of Parliament and Deputy Chair of the National Coalition Party, which is the biggest party in the Finnish Parliament at the moment. Minister Valtonen has chaired the Finnish delegation to NATO Parliamentary Assembly and served as deputy member of the Finnish delegation to the Council of Europe. Before entering politics, Valtonen worked abroad in the private sector in various countries, including for 10 years in London and Copenhagen. And as a former computer programmer, she has been involved in setting up several rapidly growing companies. I mean, what haven't you done? Minister Valtonen was born in Helsinki and is a mother to 2 children. I am very happy to have you here, Minister.
Well, thank you so much, Emilia. Good to be here. And well, what I haven't achieved yet is world peace, but that's why I'm here sitting with you guys, because I'm counting on you. And of course, as the OSCE and our Secretary General Feridun is also here. I mean, we are so committed to standing up for those principles which were signed in Helsinki 50 years ago.
I'm sure that everyone here agrees with you on the goal of achieving world peace. Thank you so much for taking time of your, what I'm sure is a very busy schedule, to come here and have a chat with us. The participants will soon get the chance to present their own questions, so guys, have your questions ready. But before that, I will ask you a few questions here. So you're almost 7 months into the year-long OSCE chairpersonship. What are your biggest key takeaways so far?
Well, I guess my biggest takeaway is also very much linked to my overall attitude to life, which is that even though there are masses of challenges in the world, there are always more solutions and more opportunities than there are challenges. And even though it has been, let's say, quite difficult in the past months to also see those opportunities behind those massive challenges that we've had as a humankind, we just need to remind ourselves every morning that those exist. And I think the Helsinki principles signed here 50 years ago are exactly that what we need for the solution. And also to not just fall into ungrounded optimism. I guess what we need to remind ourselves about is that truly in the past 50 years, for the participating states of the OSCE, the world has become better. I mean, just looking, I don't know if there are any from the Baltic countries present today, but our friends there just on the other side of the Baltic Sea, they weren't even present in the CSCE because they didn't exist as part of or behind the Iron Curtain. So these days, those people can, base their lives on exactly the same values as we can. So freedom, human rights, the rule of law, and of course the market economy without corruption. So something we as the OSCE work for every day.
Yes. World becomes better when people make it better, and that is something that really inspires me, at least every day, seeing people go out there and who are ready to make the world a better place. Let's turn to your personal experiences for a little while. When you think back to your early days as a young professional and later a politician, what do you think were some of the biggest challenges you faced then, and how did you overcome them? Give us some inspiration here.
Yeah, well, I guess it's this, at the end of the day, it's this belief that anything is possible. Even though, and that, by the way, was one of my slogans as well in the past elections, that everything is possible actually in that form, in the sense that believing in the true power of people is really not just words, for me at least. It's really something which I think Finland as a country has also stood up for massively, and this is a fantastic example where we really give the opportunity and the freedom, but also the responsibility to each and every individual to make the most of his or her life, and by such make the entire society better. And I guess for young people, the world, of course, looks crazily unstable just now, but at the same time, each and every one of you guys can also change it for the better. And also the long sort of the evolution and the trend, if you look over not just decades but also hundreds of years in the world, has been towards the better for humankind. So let's just make that evolution happen more quickly. And also I should add, because you mentioned this programming thing, 20 years ago I actually programmed some AI. Back in the day it wasn't as cool as it is today, but that certainly will be adding a lot of uncertainty, but again also massive opportunities to our societies, but also to world peace.
So you were involved with AI before it was cool.
Well, yes.
And your advice to us would be to stay positive and get engaged and make the world a better place. Did I understand you correctly?
Exactly, and stay focused on the task that you're carrying out, and don't take yourself too importantly.
Yes. I think that's some very good advice for us here. Next, we have some time for questions from you guys. So just raise up your hand, and as previously, just introduce yourselves briefly and then state your question. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Adam. I'm representing Slovakia, and I would like to ask, because you mentioned that everything is possible, so maybe personal question, what was the moment during the childhood or when you were growing up when you realized that everything is possible?
Wow. It's a very good question. Now probably I should have some nice anecdote at hand, but I don't know, but what really changed me, because back early 1990s, I lived in West Germany, or in the just unified Germany, and I had moved there in late 1990 from Helsinki, and a very good friend of mine, who's still a very good friend of mine, Christine, she came from Dresden, from the other side of the Iron Curtain, and even though we were 9 years old, we probably didn't really realize what had happened, that the Berlin wall had fallen, and also that the Soviet Union was about to collapse. We could really sense the spirit of things moving towards the better, in the sense that also, of course, our personal lives changed because we moved there, but also Bonn back then, which was the capital of Germany still. There were, of course, people from all over the world, and it was very much sort of the capital of Europe in many senses, and we felt that everything is possible.
I think often quite a few people mentioned the fall of the Berlin Wall when asked what inspired them, and I hope that one day soon, hopefully, there will be an event such as that for our generation as well, that in 20 years' time we can be in an interview like this and tell the young people then that we were really inspired by that event.
And even better if you are involved in tearing it down.
Yes,
so.
yes. Who wants to go next? Over there, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. I'm Vidmantas Mitkus. I'm the delegate from Lithuania. I have a question. With Finland's recent NATO membership marking such a historic shift, how do you believe this moment can inspire younger generation to engage more actively in shaping Europeans' security and building a resilient cooperative future?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for the good question. Well, first of all, I guess you never too often emphasize the difference, since there's so many false narratives around. The way countries join NATO is not that NATO expands by force or violence. But on the very contrary, in countries such as Finland and Sweden, it's the people who decide that they want enhanced security for not just themselves, but for their values and for other people who think alike. And then they decide on such questions, and not, again, to threaten anybody, but really to protect those values which we hold dear. And that truly is the story behind Finland's and Sweden's NATO membership, and together we are stronger. And again, I would be more than happy to, in the future, to welcome also such countries to NATO who do share the values and who want to engage in a more secure Europe and transatlantic partnership.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead. Someone will give you a mic. Yes, perfect.
Thank you, Sabine from Latvia, also a Baltic country. Thank you for mentioning before, and I hope that we will also make a better future for Ukraine. My question is very much related to the idea of this youth forum. What would be your advice for young people that are in their peak of youth maximalism, meeting adults' pragmatism? How can we bridge this generation gap? Thank you.
That's a very good question.
Well, you see, I don't think it has to be bridged at all, because the most boring thing and the most, I would say, wasted opportunity in the world is a young person who is too pragmatic and doesn't chase her dreams. Because I guess the importance in life is also that you try to challenge yourself and try to also grasp such opportunities which are a little bit further away, and which also might lead to a situation where momentarily you fail, because even through those failures you learn so much, and also you are able to appreciate so much more when you actually do succeed. Plus you're able to help other people as well on the way. So please don't close the gap of pragmatism versus idealism, because we need both in this world.
Thank you. That's a good answer as well. Over there.
Hi, my name is Abdullah. I'm the Danish youth delegate to the UN. I would like to ask you about your personal vision for us, the youth, because we've been pragmatic and we've been idealistic these past 2 days on creating a document. What's your vision on how to bring this forward?
Well, thank you for the question, and I'm so looking forward to seeing the results of the work that you have been engaged in also during these hours and days here. Well, you see, we are committed, and I can definitely speak for the entire OSCE to upholding our principles. We need new ideas. We need also reform, but we really need a lot of pragmatic work also throughout our secretariat, but also our missions across participating states. And any valuable input you're able to give us, so much appreciated, and we're trying to do our best.
Thank you. I'm very happy to hear that that you are willing to take our recommendations seriously. We will soon get to them, but before that we have time for just a few more questions over there.
Hello, nice to meet you. My name is Maria. I represent here Ukraine, Youth Council and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I have the practical question. In your opinion, what diplomatical tools and approach could be efficient for youth to promote peace and dialogue during the war? And maybe you can share the practices or initiatives or some project that you think is successful in this way. Thank you.
Well, first of all, Slava Ukraini, and it is very much our priority also during this chairpersonship year that we uphold our strong support for Ukraine, and especially for the people of Ukraine and the youth of Ukraine, who deserve a future which is free from aggression, which is free also free from corruption, and which allows people, young or old, to again approach their life the way they see fit, in liberty and free from oppression from elsewhere in whichever form. So that is very much something we will stay engaged in. And in this regard, if there's anything we can do to also empower the young people of Ukraine even better, even though I, on a daily basis, actually admire the courage that the entire people of Ukraine are putting forward, then just please let us know, because that is actually the spirit, the true spirit of Helsinki, to empower people instead of, you know, just us boring politicians blabbering around, but really people making the change. And this people making the change, that is, in the end of the day, or at the end of the day, that is the true force which will also tear down those walls.
Thank you. We have a few more questions, maybe over there.
Thank you, Minister Valtonen. It's a pleasure to listen to your inputs, contributions. My name is Asel Murat. I'm representing OSCE Secretariat here. I'm coordinating Youth Portfolio. I would love to ask a question about your leadership style. How did you define your leadership style over the years? Did it change? And how is it like to be a good leader?
Well, that is probably the most difficult question there has been so far. I guess it's all about, again, empowering people, having the right people do the right thing, because there's no other leadership or there's no other management than the management of people, and really, you know, making room for the individual aspirations, but also giving everybody such tasks that you can both succeed in, but that you also have, you know, challenges every day that you can build your academic or your career profile, and also develop as a person. So that's what I would say is my ideal, but definitely not saying that I'm 100% succeeding in that. But luckily I have such a fantastic team around me that at least they are not telling me every day how much I'm failing. But I'm trying to also encourage everybody around me to take, you know, steps forward also, or let's say even bigger leaps forward, even if it led sometimes to failure, or that you know, there's a mistake somewhere, whatever. Because also what artificial intelligence will help us doing now, but especially in the future, is that we can deterministically really be able to do some tasks. But what is needed from the human being is still to be creative and be present and be a human. So I really encourage all of you to embrace that role for us people.
Yes, leading people is quite challenging, but also very rewarding. I
Yeah.
agree. We'll take one more brief question from over there. Please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Davor, and I'm coming from Serbia as pool of young expert of OSCE and also Regional Youth Cooperation Office. My question is for you, since we're in Finland, and definitely Finland is one of the like pioneers if we talk about YPS agenda. I would like to check with you exactly when we talk about the partnerships, developing new ones and also enhancing the old ones that OSCE is having through the whole region of OSCE. Like, do we have any, let's say, new faces and new partnerships that you're planning to have in the future regarding YPS agenda? Thank you.
Well, let's start with the fact that the YPS agenda and the YPS in general is probably more needed now than it's ever been. And plus, you wouldn't be able to build on any peaceful future if you don't engage the youth. It's just as simple as that. And I guess also the main difference between being a more senior person and a younger person is not just this pragmatic, idealistic divide, which is of course never as black and white as earlier pointed out, but is that simply the youth will spend more time in the future than senior people will. We are exploring on a constant basis different ways of and different also projects and areas where we can make YPS to work. And also in this regard, I'm looking forward to the framework that I will be receiving shortly.
Yes, you will be receiving that right now, actually. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. We have to move forward to the recommendations now, but the Minister's Task Force will stay here and is available to have discussions with you guys, whatever pressing issues you may want to bring forward. So thank you very much, Minister Valtonen. We will... We will now present the recommendations to Minister Valtonen in her capacity as the OSCE chairperson, as well as the OSCE Secretary General, Feridun Siniliolu, who I would now kindly invite to the stage. Welcome. Ambassador Siniliolu is the 8th OSCE Secretary General. He was appointed in December of 2024. Before his appointment, Siniliolu served as the permanent representative of Turkey to the UN. In 2023, he was also appointed by UN Secretary General as the UN Special Coordinator for the Independent Assessment mandated by UN Security Council Resolution 2679 on Afghanistan. He also held the positions of Minister of Foreign Affairs in Turkey in the interim government of 2015 and of Permanent Undersecretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Turkey. Warm welcome. I will now give the floor to our rapporteurs, Stefania, representing the OSCE pool of young experts, and Berak from Turkey, and also our special representative, Santeri. Please go ahead, you have the floor.
Thank you. Your Excellencies and fellow colleagues, my name is Stefania Kafka and I'm a member of the OSCE pool of young experts. And together with my colleague, we are representing the young leaders and experts of this forum. It is an honor to address you today at the conclusion of 2 inspiring and productive days here in Helsinki, days that brought together young leaders and experts from across the OSCE region to not merely lend our voices, but to actively shape the trajectory of the YPS agenda. So thank you for convening this important forum. Over the past 2 days, we did not just share ideas, we worked. We came together with the goal of creating something tangible, a set of recommendations for the Youth, Peace and Security Roadmap to be prepared by Finland in its capacity as OSCE Chair in 2025. Through focused working groups supported by dedicated rapporteurs and facilitators, we engaged in meaningful dialogues, critical reflection, and collaboratory drafting. The result is a consolidated document, an expression of our shared vision, and a pragmatic blueprint on how to fast-track YPS implementation across the OSCE. This forum has shown what is possible when young people are given the space to contribute in meaningful and tangible ways. We need more spaces like this, where young people are not just invited to the room, but are empowered to build what happens inside it. Because we were not just participants, we were agents of change. And today we provide you with the tools to take that change forward. And to turn this vision into a reality, we voiced the importance of 3 pillars in ensuring meaningful young youth engagement. Meaningful partnerships, meaningful processes, and meaningful support. First, meaningful partnerships. Youth must be recognized and engaged as equal partners, stakeholders, and experts through sustained and institutionalized inclusion. This means being systematically included at the table and ensuring intergenerational fairness and justice are not just principles on paper, but values in practice. Second, meaningful processes. Involve young people as co-designers and co-managers of the processes across the board with robust mechanisms for accountability, follow-up, and feedback to ensure that our insights are taken up and that commitments are honored. Third, meaningful support. It is essential to cultivate environments that enable meaningful youth participation through comprehensive education, capacity building, and the provision of safe and inclusive spaces, and dismantle the barriers to participation and ensure the inclusion of youth in all their diversity. Let this forum not be the end of the conversation. Let our collective time, effort, and insights lay the foundation for a substantive, sustained transformation. May this moment stand as a testament to what is achievable when young people are entrusted as co-architects of peace and security. Thank you.
Dear Minister of Foreign Affairs of Finland, Honorable Secretary General of the OSCE, and esteemed participants of the Youth Forum. It is a great honor to stand here today. My name is Berrak, and I am proud to represent Turkey. The roadmap we created during this forum goes far beyond simply identifying challenges. It proposes a clear, actionable ways to overcome them. At the heart of our recommendations, it is the call for cultivate political will and institutional support for youth participation. We believe it is time to move beyond symbolic involvement and establish official, well-resourced mechanisms that allow youth to participate meaningfully in shaping the policies that affect them. Advisory bodies must be established and must be inclusive, transparent, and accessible, not tokenistic. We also highlighted the urgent need to support youth policy through research and evidence. Demonstrating the economic and social returns of youth engagement is essential to making a compelling investment case. We must shift the narrative from youth is the future to youth is also the present. And we must show it with data that translates into policy. Strategic partnerships are another cornerstone of this vision. Strong alliances between governments, civil society, academia, and international institutions are critical, but they must include youth-led organizations as equal partners at every stage. We also stressed the importance of national action plans, not only their development, but their implementation, supported by dedicated budgets. A concrete step forward would be to earmark funding from the Helsinki 50+ Fund for YPS to ensure that youth engagement is sustainably resourced. Finally, we emphasized the importance of knowledge sharing through accessible digital platforms that allow young people to map stakeholders, exchange best practices, and evaluate impact. These tools must be built with youth and for youth, ensuring transparency, accountability, and inclusion across all levels. Above all, we affirmed that youth must have equal access to information and the right to represent themselves, free from discrimination based on gender, religion, origin, economic status, or culture. These are not abstract ideals. They are commitments we are ready to pursue, collectively and persistently. Making the world a better place is not an easy task, but it definitely is a collective one. And it cannot be achieved by leaving youth behind. Thank you to all who contributed to the forum.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your work. Thank you. Dear participants, dear colleagues, dear friends, let me start by saying how truly humbled I am to receive your recommendations today. It is not every day that I get to witness such thoughtful, passionate, and forward-looking ideas come together. I want to thank each and every one of you for the time, energy, and commitment you have poured into this process. And I think the two words coined it perfectly in the introductions, which is taking agency that you are the agents for change, and that truly is what I also put my hope in. Over the past days, you have worked very, very hard to shape concrete proposals for how Finland, in its capacity as the OSCE CIO, this year, or Finland as chair, and myself as the CIO, plus, of course, the OSCE as the organization who is responsible for the operational work, can take the youth, peace and security agenda forward. These recommendations will play a key role in drafting the OSCE-wide YPS roadmap that we will be launching later this year. And thanks to you, that roadmap will be grounded in real experiences, real needs and real ambition. You have shown us that youth participation is not just a box to tick, it is a necessity. As you head back to your respective countries, organizations and communities, I hope you carry with you the confidence that your voice and your freedom matters. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. Keep speaking up, keep showing up, and keep pushing for the kind of world you want to live in. Let's tear down those walls. Thank you so much.
Dear Elina, Minister Valtonen, dear participants, it's a pleasure to be here today. Let me just say a few words about the past. This organization, who was founded 50 years ago, was founded on the very work of the 68th generation, the youth that precedes. They have made our world. So I am now addressing you not as an adult addressing youth, but you are our, of course, future. And the future is in your hands. As it was the case in 1968, they spoke up. They went out to demonstrate against all injustices and all the, things that they did not think were right. They fought for it, and they also had a big impact on the adults of their time, and they changed the world. And that made the first Ostpolitik, then Detente, and Final Act possible. We owe them a lot. They were your foremothers and forefathers, the real forefathers and foremothers. If they were not there, the signatories of the Helsinki Final Act would not be able to do the work that we cherish today. So these recommendations, thank you for that. It is the result of 2 days' work, which is very valuable, and we will take them very seriously, of course, because we are trying to build a future, and the future is your future, not us. You will live that future, not us. I want you to continue to speak up, not ask for a seat around the table. Just grab it and be there, be out. I mean, the previous generations, the generation of the 68, they were on the streets, demonstrating against the wars, against the injustices, against the inequality between genders and different classes. And that has led to the world today. And I have full confidence that you are going to build the world of the future. And please continue to engage with us. We are, of course, more than welcome with your participation in our work. This is actually a work that matters for you, not for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Valtonen and Secretary General Sinin Liu, and our dear rapporteurs, and well, everyone here, honestly. We have all done such a great work. And now is actually the time to celebrate this rather historic moment that we have on our hands with a group photo that will remain a lovely memory for all of us. I would first kindly ask the Minister and the Secretary General to be here in the front. And then I would ask everyone else to stand up and get as close to the center of the room as possible. Okay? And I believe that our photographer Mark will guide us further. Amazing. So the picture will be taken from here. Yeah, the picture will be taken from here.
This is the shooting angle.
Yes, picture is taken from here. So it would be lovely for you to show your faces. Sorry, can I squeeze myself here? Joo, mä mietin kanssa. Siis mun on pakko sanoa, sulla on aivan ihana tää blazeri. Tosi kiva väri. Nice. Työssä pääsee varmaan matkustelemaan ihan kiitettävän määrän. Mitä kivaa. Aivan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. All right, thank you, everyone. Now, please take your seats again. We will soon continue with our closing session, but we will have a slight technical break for all of you to settle down. So just a minute, stay seated, please. Thank you, everyone. Please take your seats and get ready for our closing session. We have very exciting things still coming up. The exciting things never end here in the Helsinki OSCE Youth Forum. Dear friends, it is time for our closing session. As the first speaker of this session, I am honored and privileged to welcome to the stage Volker Turk, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. Mr. Turk has devoted his career to advancing universal human rights, notably the international protection of some of the most vulnerable people in the world, so refugees and stateless people. Before this, Mr. Turk was the Under-Secretary General for Policy in the Executive Office of the United Nations Secretary General, where he coordinated global policy work. Mr. Turk also played a key role in the development of the landmark Global Compact on Refugees. That's some very inspiring work there. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Please, go ahead, you have the floor.
Well, really great to be here and to have a chance to interact with you, but also to share with you a couple of thoughts from my side, because of course I'm not from the OSCE. I'm from the United Nations, and we actually have a very similar anniversary this year, 80 years. So the United Nations, as you know, was founded 80 years ago. My own office is a little bit younger. It's in between, because my office is only about a little bit over 30 years old. As you know, the office, the Human Rights Office of the United Nations. But I was listening to your recommendations, and I found it very interesting, because a lot of what you are saying about peace and security is so much interlinked with the human dimension, which is of course related to the OSCE. And what is the human dimension? Not what is it, but human rights. So it comes back to precisely this issue of human rights. And what I wanted to leave with you is, first of all, a state of the world today where we have, unfortunately, too many conflicts. So all this peace and security agenda that we have always hoped for is not working very well, because we have some 120 conflicts in about 60 countries around the world. I'm very happy that just 2 days ago, Thailand and Cambodia managed to negotiate and mediated a ceasefire agreement. But to be honest, that's not really what we see in most situations around the world. And some of where you are coming from, you know what conflict and what war means and what violence means. And what I think gets also forgotten in this is that there are standards, even when you wage war. And these standards need to be respected, because otherwise we see that these boundaries are pushed much further away from what is acceptable. Because of course wars are always awful, but they should not have an impact on civilians in the way that they do today. And we see more and more acceptance of civilian casualties, destruction of civilian infrastructure, and these are all things that should not happen in war. And I think you as people who look around the world and who see what is happening, I'm sure are very concerned about this. And it is, again, coming back to the origins of the OSCE. I remember when I grew up in Austria, between Linz and Vienna, which was, a couple of 30 kilometers away from was then Czechoslovakia. So the Iron Curtain was part of the reality at the time. And I remember when I was very young, when I was sort of a child between 10, 15, when you start realizing what is happening, and when you actually go to the Iron Curtain and you see these watchtowers and you see basically, and you hear the stories about people trying to leave and they get shot at, and you see the barbed wire, it was quite an eerie thing. And we sometimes forget how Europe looked like, because you actually had a split through the continent where there was a lot of dehumanization. I still remember this fantastic song by Sting. I mean, maybe, I don't know if you still listen to Sting, but there was this song by Sting, The Russians Love Their Children Too, in the mid-80s or so, which in a way brought forward this idea that was very much the spirit of Helsinki at the time, that, well, we're all humans, that's what connects us, and peace is built on the basis of connection and a sense of unity and a sense of purpose, but also a sense of shared values and shared principles. And I think today's world, I'm afraid we sometimes forget about it. And that's where the OSCE and the United Nations come together, because of course the United Nations was also founded after 2 world wars, horrible world wars, especially in Europe. Let's not forget, you had 60 million people who had been displaced at the time in the immediate wake of the Second World War. I mean, these were internally displaced people who, prisoners of war. It was people who were refugees who couldn't go back to their home country. I mean, 60 million people on the move. I mean, look at the debate today when you talk about migration and refugees, and people talk about even 1,000 are too many. So it shows the reality of our own histories. Of course, it was also the experience of the Holocaust and the atrocity crimes and the genocide, the economic depression that happened in the mid-30s. And out of that was this spirit of never again. We can't allow the world to ever go back into this absolute destruction. And it helped us for a while, but I think we are back at a moment that is very fragile. Not only when it comes to wars, but also when it comes to a polarization that we see in our societies that is making it very divisive, where I sometimes wish we would find back to science and academic freedoms and truth and acceptance of facts, which frankly we don't see enough of. And I know I heard when you said, as young people, when it comes to involvement, you want to be co-creators, you want to be co-architects, co-designers. I couldn't agree more with you. It was the youth movement in, I would say, the last, just before COVID, Fridays for Future, for example, that I know had an incredible impact on politics, because it pushed governments to realize that they have to do something about climate change. I can assure you, I've seen it in my own eyes when I was at the General Assembly at the time in 2019. We had a big climate summit. There was a youth summit before that really pushed. Actually the Secretary General even said, I'm not going to be a keynote speaker, I'm going to be a keynote listener. And it was the young people who came together, and I mean, not only at the global level, but also at the local level, at the national level, and made this big push. We want to see real action on climate change. You have enormous power. You have, as also the Secretary General of the OSCE was saying, I mean, not least because of the activism of young people, things change, and they have changed. And what I want to convey to you is shape the world, and shape it based on the values and principles that we have all been working on for such a long time, but they are very tested, unfortunately, at this point in time, and they are very fragile. And if one isn't careful, we may lose them. And that means, if we lose it, means chaos, it means anarchy, it means the loss of any sense of stability, and we cannot afford this, neither any of us, but also not yourselves when you look to the future, and certainly not future generations, because I agree with you, it's not just about the future, it is about the present, and the present is now, and it is upon us to take the right decisions, because we do not want to end up in a world that is characterized by chaos and anarchy and instability. So you have an enormous amount of power that you can use, and I have seen it move people and politicians as well, and politics, and it's, as I said, it's more of a listening rather than of an exercise of saying that this has to be done in this, or prescribing what has to be done or what has not to be done. But it is also important, I'm very glad that you have come to this event, it's important to be aware of history and to know history, because very often I see in today's politics the absence of historical knowledge, and we know how important it is that you actually build on historical experience, so that we are not only not repeating the mistakes of the past, but that we are also learning and knowing what can guide us, what are the signposts for the future. So great to be here and happy to have an engagement with yourselves.
Yeah, you can stay there. Yes, fragile moment for never again to happen again. Thank you very much for also your inspiring remarks about us as young people shaping the world. I found them very, very inspiring. Now we have some time for questions. So whatever you would like to ask from the High Commissioner, now is your €1,000,000 time. So please raise up your hands and introduce yourself briefly as previously, and he will then answer your questions. So go ahead.
Hello, thank you very much for addressing us today. Marta from Switzerland. I'm fangirling a little bit. Thank you again for all the work that you and your department and the people you're currently working with are doing, and the ones you have worked with in the past. It's very important. I really, really relate with many of the words that you were mentioning. You talked about dialogue. You talked about connection, connectivity, knowing the past. For me, it would be interesting because in this youth dialogue, we have been discussing so much on how do we engage the people that normally we don't see in this room, and how do we engage with people who do not agree with us or agree that, for example, YPS might be important. From your experience or your team's experience, engaging with people from very much different backgrounds, but also different opinions and different facts that they relate to, what are some of the best practices and lessons learned you could share with us?
Sure, we can take a couple of questions and then you can answer all of them at once. Does 3 sound good? Yeah. Amazing. I'll give the floor to you there.
Yeah. Hello, Linus Steinmetz from Germany, and thank you for what I found to be very moving words by you. Thank you. I wanted to ask a question about hope and the role, or where you see hope in the international system, because from what you described and also what I think all of us recognize, both the OSCE and the UN system, and in particular human rights, are under stress. And as young people, we often ask ourselves, where can we find hope for like a liberal international order, or an international order at least which respects human dignity? Yeah, maybe you have some thoughts about that.
Shall we take a third one still?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Muhayo from OSCE office in Tajikistan. I want to take this chance to thank organizers. During these 2 days, we had insightful discussion about vital topics related to youth. And I would like to ask you, building on previous 2 questions, what would be one piece of advice that you give to young people about what exactly they can do on their behalf on personal and professional level in order to draw attention of decision maker, politicians, governments to important agenda YPS, so that they start taking this agenda seriously and they start prioritizing YPS in their political and administrative work. Thank you.
Good. The question that you have asked is actually the $1 million question, or you would say €1,000,000 question. Because a lot of studies that have been done show that there is if you look at political and constituencies, there is the vast middle, which is persuadable middle, which is maybe between 60-70% of any population, that is probably very confused these days, and where the framing of how they deal with an uncertain time and with a lot of not really knowing and very confusing time as well, where you can actually find ways and means to engage them. But they feel often frustrated, they feel that they feel powerless, they feel angry, depending on some of they feel angry because either of their own individual situation or about the state of the world sometimes. And somehow the compass has been lost. And I think it is essentially on, and of course you have the political extremes on I mean, you always have extremists, and you have the lure and the seduction of populism. But you have in the middle a political force that one needs to communicate with, and I don't think we have done a very good job at it collectively. Because if you see, when you look at mainstream media today, they are getting more and more pushed out. We have also lost a little bit this public space, an open public space where things can be discussed and put on the table, where you agree to disagree, and where you say, well, actually finding compromise. I mean, you have probably gone through this by crafting your recommendations, where when you actually have a discussion, you listen to the other. You may not entirely agree, but some of it may be another perspective, and you end up with a formulation that may not be and may not be the perfect one, but it's a compromise. And frankly, in any society, in order to find a solution, you will have to find compromises. But that art of compromise we have really lost. And it goes a bit to this binary mindset, either, especially in conflict situations, either you're for me or you're against me. And it's this, what I think very often happens in discussions about real issues. You immediately have the emotions come through very strongly. And sometimes I have to say, as you know, even in social media have also almost put us into a bubble, into an echo chamber, where we don't actually listen to the ones that fiercely disagree with us. But we need to listen to them as well. Not that we suddenly become persuaded, but we need to listen what it is, and what is also listen carefully, so that we know also what is behind it. That's the only way to find a solution at the end of the day. And I think that's something that we have lost, that art. So how do we regain that art? I think you are probably amazing communicators, but we need to find this connection to bringing forward what is so fundamentally human in us, and make that again the right thing. You know, I mean, sometimes I wish we could say, like, make lying wrong again, but because I mean we see too much lying, especially in politics these days. But you almost want to say, yeah, make humanity again the thing that we all strive for, and that it's not wrong to hope for a humanity and a human dignity that is actually inspiring people and moving them to action. So I think I'm afraid I don't have the answer. I mean, I know that we know what needs to be done, but it's one of the biggest challenges. So those of you who go into communications, please let us know what your ideas are, because we will need them. It's one of the biggest challenges that we have. I think hope, look, I'm always extremely inspired when I go on visits. I was just to give you one example, I was in Sri Lanka a couple of weeks ago. And I see, when I meet with victims or with families of missing persons, right? I went to a mass grave site, Jemani, in Jaffna, near Jaffna. Hundreds of people were waiting for me, because they wanted to share not only their hopes, but also their concerns, and so that I would transmit it to the authorities and to the government about accountability, about issues, and of what happened for 30 years in the past. And they still, they showed me the pictures of their loved ones. They still haven't brought closure to their lives. And that shows how important it is to bring in the global dimension, the United Nations, into the lives of people who have the hope for us to do our job. And that is very motivating, because it actually says, okay, what we do counts for people that none of us know, but who know the value of this work. The same Bangladesh. I mean, you probably followed a year ago, there was a massive student demonstration. Fortunately, the previous prime minister, we know that now for a fact, decided to ask the police to shoot at them. we managed to get involved in this to some extent, and to also be absolutely clear that this is unacceptable. This has consequences, including from an accountability perspective, and I think it probably helped that the army stayed out of it. And in a way, it shows that the system, if we use it, can actually have a very concrete and very positive impact and prevent the worst, but also in many instances make sure that the laws are changed and are in conformity with human rights. We have hundreds of examples of where we can actually make that difference or get people out of detention. We got 3,000 people out of detention last year, political prisoners or people who we call arbitrarily detained. And that is huge because you actually get people into freedom. And on your last point, I mean, what would I think the biggest thing to convey to you is to never give up hope, never give up more generally, and always have an open mind. And don't fall into the mindset that we so often see that is so binary. Either you are for me, you're against me, things are not black and white generally. They're much more nuanced. And in our world, unfortunately, we get into this polarization, but polarization has never found a solution. So, maybe this open mind, this critical open mind, and the creativity that goes along with it is probably the strongest that I can convey to you.
Thank you. Wow, those are some really wise words, don't you guys think? I mean, I could just listen and listen. Luckily, we don't have to stop yet. We still have time for questions. We'll take first maybe you there.
Hello, my name is Adam. I'm representing Slovakia. I just wanted to tell that it was very nice that you mentioned like Czechoslovakia, and I just wanted to add one more thing that unfortunately when someone was shot at the border, that was the lucky one, because unfortunately it was quite often that those people were teared by dogs, and the communists let them die, really suffer every second. But to the question that I wanted to ask, what hope young person or youth in general should have when we see in the real examples that international laws and agreements are being ignored, and what works for aggressors in the world is only higher militarization? Thank you.
We'll take another question from you.
Dear Mr. Turk, it's a big pleasure to meet you. My name is Maria, I represent Ukraine. So my question is, it's a hard question, so I'm sorry for that. Due to Russian Federation aggression to Ukraine, we have a lot of captivity and torture of prisoner of war, civilians and just soldiers into and a bad condition of prison. So what do you think, how we can strengthen all together, maybe by your official institution, how we can strengthen international mechanism for protect their human rights, protect them in general, and protect their dignity as a human being? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take one more question from there.
Really nice to meet you. My name is Paula Pattikangas. I chair the Youth Peace and Security Network here in Finland, and I have also acted as a United Nations youth delegate, so it's really a pleasure to meet you. And I was really happy to hear about the future generations, but I'm going to touch upon other topic that is really relevant, especially to young people, which is digital space. And that's also a topic that's highly important in the peace and security themes as well. What are the issues that you are most worried about regarding human rights in digital space? And do you have some solutions how we could hinder or prevent those from happening? I think I might be correct if I say that 2 years ago there was one of the first resolutions in the United Nations about human rights in digital space, only 2 years ago. So obviously threats are growing, so would like to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Great. Look, the first one, I am very worried about an approach that takes us back in time, which looks at security only from the military and the defense perspective. Because security, and I mean, in a way, this event is so important because it reminds the world that security was not only about defense and military spending, it is also importantly about the human dimension. You can't build security with arms. And that, I think, is a really, I mean, that's where Helsinki, where the final act, that was the spirit of Helsinki. And it's important to honor this, because it broadened, it had the three baskets, no? It had disarmament, it had the human, and in particular the human dimension. And it was hugely important that this human dimension was part of a security understanding, and it gave hope to the dissidents, it gave hope to the ones who were imprisoned, who ended up either as people who were exiled. I mean, and that we sometimes today in some of the political discussions that I hear, I find them extremely reductive and reductionist. So I think it's important to push everyone to think beyond militarization and beyond military and defense spending, because it's not going to work like that. I mean, if we have this very narrow view, it's absolutely not going to work. On international law, I share that concern entirely. And the erosion of international law is a big threat. And international law is still the compass. And there are some in some very powerful countries, I mean, you know which ones I'm talking about, and it's not only one, it's a couple, who really think that they can flout international law. And the only way to ensure that they don't is to have strong resistance to the flouting of international law. And I mean, I can tell you, when you look even at highest court decisions, and we come to Ukraine, the European Court of Human Rights issued a judgment, Russia, Ukraine. My office's reports were cited 500 times, which shows that things, if they're, and I know it doesn't bring comfort to the victim, but it does make sure that the world doesn't forget. And it makes sure that the highest courts around the world can use these documents and can use them precisely for accountability reasons and for reasons to bring justice to it. Because we know that victims will always ask for justice. They're not asking for, I mean, they know, I mean, as I mentioned in Sri Lanka, they know that their loved ones are not going to come back after all these years. But they want to bring closure to it, and they demand that there is that we know what happened, and they know at least, where did the person die, or where was he or she disappeared to. And that brings closure rather than not knowing and worrying about it. On POW, you mentioned the fate of my office. Did a very detailed report actually a couple of times. We did reports on the systematic torture of POWs, which is something that we have raised publicly also many, many times. I mean, the only way is that those countries that have any leverage use it and make sure that torture of prisoners of war, which is a flagrant violation of international law, international human rights law, that this is stopped. And we will continue, of course, making the point, documenting, and making sure that the world knows about it. But we don't have the influence over Russia to stop this practice, unfortunately. On the digital side, yes, that's one of the biggest challenges. You probably saw that the International Court of Justice recently issued an important advisory opinion last week on climate change. And I was actually very happy talking about hope, I was very happy to see that, and by the way, that particular advisory opinion was because of the Pacific youth groups that I had a chance to meet, who lobbied, advocated that Vanuatu, this Pacific island state, would bring it to the General Assembly so that the International Court of Justice would finally come up with this advisory opinion. And that's remarkable. It's one of the best advisory opinions I've ever read of the International Court of Justice, because it brings together the different strands of law, but it makes it absolutely clear that there are obligations by states, including from a human rights perspective, that they need to do everything in their power to ensure that not even the fossil fuel industry is reined in, and that we find alternatives to the current reality. And these are binding obligations of states, and if they don't respect them, sorry to be a lawyer now, it's a wrongful act and there is responsibility attached to it. That's remarkable. I can tell you, if tomorrow a case on digital were to come up, because as you know, there are huge differences between regulation, non-regulation, well, I can tell you, human rights, and that has always been our position, human rights apply both offline but also online, and there are very concrete human rights obligations that not only states have but also businesses. And I mean, there's also this whole issue of guiding principles on business and human rights, and I think there will, and we have seen it, there are more and more cases that are brought before courts that bring in that perspective. Because if, for example, in Myanmar, at the time when we saw the ethnic cleansing of one population, the Rohingya population, the only social media that was available was Facebook, and Facebook had one person who spoke the majority language Bamar, didn't speak any of the other languages in the country, to know what was going on the social media front. And I can tell you, there were tirades of hatred and incitement to violence that were totally unnoticed by Facebook, by the provider, and that allowed this extremely toxic situation to come up. So there is a question of negligence, and I would even go further, of complicity in some respects. Of course, that is again a legal question that needs to be answered. But yes, I think well, there should be a movement to ask the International Court of Justice for the applicability of human rights law to those unregulated areas of business conduct that is actually very harmful in today's world. And I see one of the biggest threats in generative AI. It's a huge risk. And to be honest, I mean, both AI, but also the harmful disinformation that takes place and that polarizes societies to such an extent that we can't even have any more some basic social cohesion within societies. I think that's very big and a very big challenge for us, for all of us.
Thank you very much. I think that we have still time for questions. You can go first. Go ahead.
Thank you, Sabine from Latvia, and I'm very glad that you brought up the ICJ advisory opinion that was recently issued, because I was drafting my question right at that time, and since you have the experience with stateless people working on that, I wanted to ask your opinion on the court's recognition that, and now I quote, once a state is established, the disappearance of one of its constituent elements would not necessarily entail the loss of statehood. And also, if we look ahead in the future, when some other country, when the land is submerged under the ocean, how could we prevent that the receiving country doesn't overwhelm the population that's displaced there? Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Who else would like to ask a question? Go ahead.
Honorable High Commissioner Turk, since you mentioned that you worked for over 2 decades, if I'm not mistaken, in the field of international protection, protecting the most vulnerable, and now you have to deal also with the most complex and human rights issues. I was just wondering, did these experiences in a way shift the way you see the role and resilience of young people when it comes to dealing with these aspects and especially promoting peace? And if yes, how? That would be very interesting example considering your walk of lives. Thank you.
Thank you. And one more question maybe from you. Yes.
Hello, dear Mr. Commissioner. My name is Enya Hoja and I represent Albania here. It's an honor being able to have this forum and have you as a guest. For me, human rights are a very sensitive topic and I've been advocating for many years. So my question would be as simple but as difficult at the same time. How could human rights be enforced globally to be respected? And how can youth play a significant role to make sure that these human rights are being respected in the right way, and how to overcome the issues that we are facing globally? We're talking about blocking of humanitarian aid, very big deaths when we're talking about children numbers and so on. Thank you.
Good. Well, you know, the old theory of international law was always statehood, territory, population, and exercise of power. I'm definitely with the ICJ advisory opinion. I mean, and in fact, even before that, we thought that doctrine had to change if by force of nature, well, not really nature, by force of what climate change does, which is human-made, isn't the concept of statehood changing? And it is. And I think the ICJ gave a very interesting indication to that effect. And you have actually seen some practices. Kiribati, one of the Pacific Islands, I think New Zealand had offered that in the event that there could be a flooding of certain islands, that people could actually relocate there, which doesn't take away the statehood, because you never know. I mean, and it has also issues of, as you know, of contiguous zone. I mean, all the issues around law of the sea. So, yes, I think this ICJ opinion was extremely, extremely important. So this concept of statelessness would not apply here. I mean, I was very happy when the Security Council passed a resolution on youth, peace and security, because it also shows, when you look at peace negotiations or even mediation, one of the big issues that we see, and that's where the human rights perspective comes in, we see people who should be involved not involved or excluded from the table. I mean, if most of, and that's sometimes, I mean, you have, you know, there's these two, you have women, peace and security, youth, peace and security. And I'm glad that at least the Security Council, as the competent organ of the UN, has put forward both. But if you do the analysis of most peace negotiations or even mediation efforts, it's a lot of lip service and it's not much practice. And I sometimes wonder, when you look at conflicts today, whether an investment of the type that you have been doing now at the abstract level of the OSCE, actually really focusing on some conflicts, whether you wouldn't be coming up with much better ideas than what we currently see. So, because I mean, but you, of course, it's mediation is, or peace negotiations is not a thing that is not for the faint-hearted. It is a very tough issue, obviously. But those of you who are moved by peace and also who see, you know, this connection between peace and human rights, I would really encourage you to embrace it, because what we often see is that it becomes a very technical discussion, and that you need on security experts, and that there isn't enough, again, the human dimension to it. But we also know that if you go into the history of peace agreements, if you ignore it, it's not going to work. And you have examples where it has worked, where peace negotiations embraced a human rights dimension. I mean, in Latin America, there are many, many of these examples. To some extent, I would mention also Bosnia, but we also see that there are issues now. But yes, you need to ensure that the human rights dimension is part of it. And I think you as young people, and especially with youth, peace and security agenda, you can bring in that perspective and come up with creative ideas, because we often lack that the world lacks, unfortunately, that creativity. And don't accept what you sometimes hear and what you may have heard, oh, this is a lost cause, it can't be done. I think the can-do attitude is one that is very much needed these days. And on enforcement of human rights, well, that's the big issue. Of course, in Europe, you have the European Convention and you have the court. And I'm a bit worried when I see some politicians now questioning the court or the jurisprudence, and you have to be very careful about this, because the European Convention of Human Rights is not the issue to resolve some of the very complex areas of migration and refugees. It's not the issue of the court or of the convention. And the convention is a European convention, is it's legally binding, even if in some instances, some governments or some countries are not necessarily always fulfilling their obligations, but at least you have an obligation. The human rights system more generally of the United Nations has some teeth. It doesn't have enough teeth. We don't have enforcement powers. But I can tell you, and the ambassador knows here, because we have the ambassador of Finland to the United Nations in Geneva, I have to give a global update 3 times a year, just to give you one little example, and to the Human Rights Council. And the Council is not just the 47 states, it's actually all member states of the UN are present, and mostly ambassadorial level when I do this global update. And you could let a pin drop, because there is always this maybe anxiety or concern which country is going to be mentioned, and that shows that we have some power. And I can tell you, a lot of governments are extremely unhappy with the type of things that we say and do, precisely because they do somewhat care about it. But it needs to be much deeper, and I think it needs to be part of, the understanding of social political movements, that they embrace the human rights cause not as something that is ideological, but as something that unites us. Because sometimes human rights also gets put into ideological corners. It's not about that. It's non-ideological. It is about fundamental values, principles, and it's about rights that people have.
Thank you very much. I especially agree on what you said about we need more creativity and we need more ambition. Thank you to all of you for your excellent questions, and thank you for your excellent answers.
Thanks. All the best.
Next, I will one more time give the floor back to Santeri, our YPS special representative. Go ahead.
Thank you, Emilia. This is also outside the forum a really specific day, because today is the 108th birthday of my hometown, Hyvinkää. So, especially group number 2, I would probably get a tattoo about that or something. But this has been quite a journey. I've been following this event since January, and because of that, I would like to thank the organizing team, and especially I've been talking to little birds, as we say in Finland, and they've told me that especially Annika and Erika have done a tremendously great job. And it's too bad that everybody thinks that I've done something, because they come to me and tell how well everything has been and how great the schedule has been, but it's actually you, so thank you very much, even though you only say that you're doing your job. But we have a small Kahoot, so I would invite you all to take out your phones, and we'll probably get it here somewhere. Closing remarks. And there'll be only one question. We're also loading for the game bin. 684,823. if there is anyone who knows how to dance rumba, this would be like one of the, maybe in the after party, a great moment for that as well. When I was in high school, this was always the moment when the Kahoot crashed, because nobody had paid for the full version and we only had 28 users, but luckily it hasn't happened yet. Are we actually losing people? Yes. Okay, closing remarks. If you had to describe your experience at the Youth Forum in just one word, what would it be? And now you can type your answer. Preferably a word in English, but if it's like, if there's like a really specific word, I'm not against it. I'm a multilingual person, but flabbergasted. Inspiring. That's great. I would translate the flabbergasted as pöllämystynyt into Finnish. But participation, please, diversity, momentum, motivating, inspirational. There's also inspiring in very different ways. And the greatest, I hope you have attended multiple forums, because that would make the greatest forum a lot more better recommendation. Yeah, I think you can all read, hopefully. It's not, I'm not judging anybody if you don't. We have a lot of people who help. Maybe to say just a few closing remarks, so we have a few minutes time. 2025 Finnish chairpersonship will come to an end in December. And that will also, like, oh, we lost the cloud. No, we didn't. We didn't lose the cloud. And when the chairpersonship comes to an end, like, I will also cease to exist, because there will be no Finnish special representative no more. But as a person, I'll continue to live on, and I personally think that I have been really touched by the OSCE. And no matter what happens after the Finnish chairpersonship, I think there is a small sparkle of the OSCE burning in my heart. And in my opening speech, I told you about the middle-aged diplomats who used to have the same spark, and for some of them is gone, but not for all of them, and that's why we gather here today, because they wanted to light our torches with the same spark. And I actually think that we are also going to be middle-aged someday. Not all are going to be middle-aged diplomats, but I hope that all of you, now that we have learned a lot about the different function of the OSCE and the field missions and the institutions and all the terminology that I don't know how to properly use, but you'll probably learn in the after party, so that one of those things would inspire you to do something, to have the OSCE spark in your heart, and you take it with you, and then we meet in 30 years and are like 30 years older than now, so at least 31. And that we have the sparkle, and we can put it forwards and do something about it in the things that we do, whether it's that you will be a member of parliament or an intern at an embassy or anything in between. But I think that's the key message that I want to give to you, and that was the message you wanted to give to us, and the message we gave to the world in the OSCE community we gave in the beautiful plastic-covered papers to the minister earlier. But from this side, I'd like to thank you all, encourage you to follow each other on LinkedIn, and have as much fun as possible, and to learn to know each other and enjoy the sunny Helsinki for as long as you're here. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Santeri, for this whole forum. I have a few more practical information points before I can let you all go. Which one of you are coming to the Helsinki Plus 50 conference tomorrow? Almost everyone. Wow, I am very happy to see you all there. A few points on that. Some of you will be also coming to the city's reception happening tonight. You will not need your badges at the reception. They will have a list of names, and if you have registered, your name will be on the list, so no need for badges there. You can gain your badges for the Helsinki Plus 50 conference tomorrow from the Finlandia Hall conference venue tomorrow morning from 8 o'clock. I think, or I recommend you going there as early as possible, as there will be a lot of people there, and you want your badges, and you also want to participate in the side events that are happening at the same time. So be there early tomorrow. All of the information you can find when you search on Google or whatever is your preferred search engine. You search Helsinki Plus 50 and you will find everything from there. Also, if you have any urgent questions now, there's still info desk and we are still here for a few minutes, so you can come ask us as well. Cool. Well, I mean, thank you so much for this experience from my side as well. It has truly been an honor to be your master of ceremony here. And special thank you for all of the speakers. Thank you for forgiving me for mispronouncing all of your names. Thank you. I will now close the event, and I wish that everyone has a lovely rest of the day and rest of the year. Please take some of these examples and advice you have gained from here. Take the inspiration and turn it into something magical. Thank you very much. Forum is now officially closed.